welcome back to our Catholic Conversation. So today I'd like you to get to know our two newest seminarians. Actually, Deacon Dennis is not new to our community. He came several years ago when he was assigned, when he was a seminarian at St. John's Seminary, and we got to know him and have kept in touch. Some of us were over for his ordination last October in Italy, and now he's with us. But for those of you who maybe don't know Deacon Dennis, I'm going to ask him to tell us a little bit about your vocation story. How did you come here to Boston?
Great, yeah. So just in brief, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and I wasn't really into the whole Catholic thing when I was younger. I just kind of did my own thing. Started falling away from my faith a little bit in high school, but then all of that changed when I got to college. I attended Boston University, and while I was there, had just this profound conversion experience after realizing the life I was living was not what I should be living, and then God really spoke through all of that, brought me on a retreat, and in that got to experience Him profoundly for the first time, and I knew everything had to change at that point. So I started getting involved in all these Catholic activities with the campus ministry, and through that, just being able to discern a vocation, and God made it abundantly clear towards the end of my junior year that He was calling me to the priesthood. I was pre-med while I was there. I was a physiology major, and I thought I was going to be a doctor and all this stuff, but God called me to a different place. And it was tough for me to leave it behind at first, but when I realized that God was indeed calling me, I knew I couldn't do anything else. So I applied during my senior year and entered seminary right after graduating. And that brought me to St. John's Seminary in Brighton for 2 years, and then Cardinal Sean sent me to Rome to do my theological studies, and that's where I've been up until 2 weeks ago when we were called back, but we'll get to that in a second.
Right. Yeah. Okay, Joe, welcome to Peabody in Salem. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Great. It's good to finally be here. And it might sound like I didn't prepare at all, because just like Dennis, I also grew up in New York, went to Boston University, went on a retreat, entered St. John's Seminary, and went to Rome. But this is my own story. But I grew up originally in Long Island, New York, and went to Boston University to do my undergraduate studies there. And I was a cradle Catholic school, K through 12. But it was really only until that year, that last year of college actually, that I really began to take my faith seriously. Thanks to God, I was invited on a retreat, which really changed everything for me, and kind of began this long and slow process in some ways, but also very quick and very radical. Just kind of learning a lot about the faith, being drawn in, being welcomed into a very good community at BU. And after working there for a year, kind of volunteering with the campus ministry, I entered seminary and did my 2 years of philosophy studies at St. John's. And I'm just about almost finishing up my 2 years so far, studying at the North American College in Rome. And so it's good to be here now in Peabody for the rest of the semester and into the summer. So I have been praying for all of you and look forward to actually meeting you in the near future.
So it's an interesting thing about vocation stories today. These men come from different places. In fact, what's interesting is that over the last few years, we've had seminarians whose life began in New York. So this is an interesting thing. Everybody knows that rivalry, right, between New York and Boston. But it's interesting to me the way God works in your lives. I was like many of my classmates, came into the seminary right out of high school, and most of us were sort of native-born, Boston area. But it's interesting how God is calling men to the priesthood, and they grow up in one place, but they kind of find a calling to another. And that's kind of a feature of diocesan priesthood. It really is a call to serve in a particular place, and God has discerned for you, or you have discerned God's will to be here with us. Both of these men have been in Italy, and we've been reading a lot about Italy because it's been one of those epicenters of the coronavirus. So, guys, what was it like living in Italy as all of this was sort of unfolding?
It was a little crazy. When things started appearing, Rome wasn't hit much at first. Most of the activity was happening in northern Italy, but you kept hearing about it, and it started some discussion amongst the seminarians, and as we're apt to do, we just talk about everything and come up with these crazy theories about what's going to happen and everything. But then it started slowly developing, and it seemed like each day brought some news to the story that just changed things a little bit. slowly we started things changing in Rome when our university started closing, and then the Italian government issued a lockdown, and so we were confined within the seminary walls. But we had a great setup over at the seminary in Rome. There's a decent campus there where we can walk around. We at least have the camaraderie of everyone living in the house, and we have facilities that help us just live a normal enough life over there, and we were well taken care of. But then things started to change as further restrictions were happening, and then people were less able to come in to work. And so the personnel and Italian workers that help out at the seminary weren't able to come in to work, and that just started changing the dynamic in the house, eventually to the point where the rector felt it best for us to return home, just because he wasn't able to say with certainty whether these workers would be able to come in. They were worried they weren't able to come in, and just with the state of the Italian hospitals right now, just if something were to happen in our community, the hospitals wouldn't be able to accommodate such a house.
That was smart. So Joe, what was it like? Were you practicing this safe distancing at the North American, or what was changing in terms of just the internal dynamics of the community?
Yeah, well, I was saying last night that the first time we kind of heard about it, kind of in a very public way, was Ash Wednesday. Our rector kind of announced to the community just kind of the state of affairs and introduced some new policies for the house, and kind of just encouraging us to, just hygiene and kind of some basic things to try and keep the house healthy. So at that point, we were still going out into the city for our universities. People were going to mass in the city, kind of living a very normal life, even traveling a little bit. So it wasn't as severe yet, but we were starting to kind of just be a little bit more cautious. And yeah, as Dennis said, that just kind of started to develop. So we started to have less people sitting at tables for meals, so we tried to spread out distance that way, eventually spreading out in the chapel as well. But in some ways it was also interesting because we were like one big family living in the community. So we were cautious, but by the last couple of weeks at least, we were essentially quarantined within the walls. And so we were able to kind of live a very beautiful, actually kind of familial life together, to have that fraternity amongst ourselves and kind of be in it together, if you will. Not to sound cliche, but it was a real blessing, I think, for all of us to, as it kind of developed and got very serious in Italy, but then also in the United States, so as we were starting to hear from family back home about the kind of developing situation, it was a real grace to have each other to kind of to live with, to kind of talk about with, to pray with. It was just kind of that slow development, and then kind of eventually reached its climax for us.
What was it like on the plane? They were telling us last night, the plane's pretty full, a lot of people kind of escaping, fleeing back to the States, but these people had been in Italy too. So tell us how that
Yeah, it's amazing. We left probably at least a week or so after the president announced the kind of closing of the borders, if you will, which didn't apply to U.S. citizens, but I did think it kind of got enough people to kind of want to return home, making sure it didn't get any more serious. But at that point, we were still staying. We thought, okay, we can kind of, we're well prepared enough here in the college. So by the time we left, it was really at least 4 weeks since it kind of became really serious in Italy. And so I figured at that point, most of the Americans would have been home already. But the plane from Alitalia, from Rome to JFK, was pretty crowded. But yeah, Alitalia required us to wear masks, so they were giving those out if we didn't have them. And so, other than eating, basically, you had the mask on for the flight, more or less, which you kind of get used to, but it's a long flight. And even the airports, so there's always, maintaining the distancing, kind of making sure we were doing that. You can tell they were purifying things. And so there was kind of a lot of activity in Rome, surprisingly, in the airport there. But then, JFK was very eerily quiet, like I've never seen it before. And then, we had that connecting flight to Logan, which was pretty crowded as well. But we got tested right off the flight at JFK. They took our temperature right away. Well, that was the extent of it. They took our temperature, let us know what it was, making sure we weren't showing symptoms, and then had us go through. But the CDC recommended, if not more strongly than that, had us all kind of do a self-quarantine for 14 days. So that's what Dennis and I are just coming off. So 14 days of being quarantined once we got back to the United States, which was a pretty nice experience. It was kind of...
Right, tell us tell us about that. Where did you go, and what was it like living by yourselves for 14 days?
Yeah, it was quite the experience. So luckily, just with the suddenness of everything, the diocese was very good in arranging our accommodations. So we were at an undisclosed location in Brighton, so we were able to stay at a house there, and we were provided with plenty of food. People have been very generous in providing us with groceries, supplying other things that we needed to get picked up. And it was great. It was myself, it was Joe, and we had a priest from Worcester staying with us as well. And so it was actually a blessed time. We had a room that was used as a chapel, so we, praise God, there was availability of the sacraments, and we used that in a special way, especially given we know with all the social distancing and people are not able to receive the Eucharist at this time. We made it a particular intention to pray for all those who cannot receive it at this time. But it was honestly a great time. Just we developed a little routine amongst ourselves. We still had to get up for class, and it was all on Roman time. So
Right, these guys, by the way, weren't on vacation. It sounds like, wow, nothing to do. We're back here at home, enjoying ourselves. But they're still. So, what is it like to go to school, online when your classes are 6 hours different time?
yeah, it's and Joe can speak on a little bit of a different thing because poor Seminarian Joe some of his classes started at 2:30 in the morning Eastern time. Luckily for me, I didn't have to wake up that early, but it was still tough waking up early. And now all our classes are on either Zoom or Google Meet. It's interesting, just a different dynamic. Some classes are a little shorter because typically at the Roman universities you have the whole schedule of you go for 45 minutes and then take a 15-minute break and then repeat. But some of our professors decided to forego the break, which has continued through. And it's actually a little different having, it was nice actually seeing our classmates and colleagues actually on the screen. It was good to still have that sense of community in there. And actually a little different because depending, wherever you sit, you're not necessarily seeing people's faces. So it was actually interesting seeing that. Professors have been very good at adapting their material and adapting the courses to actually be able to do this online. But it's been quite the experience. School hasn't ended, so we're still going through that. We still have that for another month and a half after Easter.
Now, how will you take exams online? How is that going to work?
They haven't told us.
They haven't told you.
Yeah, we figured some of our professors are going to switch to submitting a paper because that'll be the easiest thing. But in Rome, a lot of our exams have been oral exams, and so there's a possibility they might do that over Zoom. Who knows? But they're going to let us know after Easter how the exams are going to proceed.
So, Joe, with that schedule, like 2:30, so what has your day been looking like when you're going to class at night? I mean, you sleep during the day.
Very weird. I would definitely sleep at some point during the day, but I would try and get to bed as early as I could. It still required a lot of coffee, but no, it's a great blessing. My classes this semester are so great that in some ways I don't mind waking up so early. And so it's a great blessing in modern technology that not only are we not physically friends, but now I'm across the ocean, that I can still kind of interact with my professors, ask them questions, we can kind of see each other. So for the time being, when I was in quarantine, waking up at 2:30 wasn't so bad. But it'll be hard to get back into that schedule again after Easter. But they're very accommodating, so we can obviously watch lectures at a later recorded date sometimes as well, or a later recorded time. But I actually appreciate kind of having that interaction still, despite all the kind of circumstances and the fact that it's 2:30 in the morning.
So, also you might be interested in knowing, so rectories are now becoming like little mini seminaries. So we are hosting these men, plus Deacon Dan, plus our seminarian Jeremy, and then of course Father Kevin, myself, and Father Paul. So it's kind of tight quarters. But interestingly enough, the seminary has asked us to sort of help maintain a kind of seminary horarium. So what does that look like when you're not in the seminary, but what would, we were just going over this a little bit last night. What are the things that are supposed to make you still be in a community of formation?
So you look. This actually forces us to look at what a horarium is actually for, a way of life, a routine of life. And they provide us a lot at the seminary, which actually helps, that's part of formation, helping us grow in the discipline of prayer life. And what's good is they're trying to keep that sort of maintained in these rectory conditions. And so they want us to have the essentials. And so we do a daily holy hour together. We pray morning and evening prayer, the liturgy of the hours together. And because it's a different situation, there's also all the other aspects of rectory living, like communal meals and just recreation time together as well. And so you look at the essential aspects of prayer, the essential aspects of community life, putting that together, and then eventually when we are off from our Easter break, when school is back in session, giving up each other that time to study and actually attend school.
And they're here not only to finish off their academic year, but they've been assigned to be part of our parish community. Now, that's one of the things we're still trying to figure out. What are you going to do? What can you do? Because they can tell you about their summer assignments. One of the things that the seminary wants them to have is an experience of parish life. So we're all looking forward, as you are, to some kind of more normal routine of life where you could get to know them. There'll be opportunities for them to get out amidst the people. So one of the challenges right now is thinking about how these men might be able to interact with you. So we're going to talk a little bit about that this afternoon. But one of the great features of the social media is that you can communicate with us. So one of the things to keep in mind, one of the things you can let us know, is how these seminarians might be able to serve in this kind of virtual church community that we're now living in, because they're eager to get to know you. I'm sure you're eager to get to know them. And so that's one of the things that we'll be looking for in the next few weeks. One of the things we want to talk about today is the Triduum, because tomorrow evening through Saturday evening, the church really celebrates one liturgy that is spread over 3 days to commemorate the passion, death, and resurrection of the Lord. I'll just kind of highlight a couple of things, and then these men are very close to their studies, so they can kind of fill in from a more academic point of view, a little bit more liturgical theology. So tomorrow night, the Mass of the Lord's Supper reminds us of Jesus and his disciples in the upper room. Many of you who have witnessed it, have participated in it, know one of the beautiful parts of the ceremony has been the washing of the feet. But because of the norms that we're living with right now, the directors, there won't be any washing of the feet. Mass usually ends with the Eucharistic procession, and we won't be able to do that either. So it's going to be a little different this year on Holy Thursday. On Good Friday, the celebration of the Lord's Passion, we will read the Passion of the Lord according to John, and we will have a sort of simplified version of the veneration of the cross. And then on Holy Saturday evening, we usually begin outside with the lighting of the new fire, lighting the Paschal candle. All of that is kind of collapsed into simply the lighting of the candle, the singing of the Exultet, a hymn of praise to God in the presence of the Paschal candle, which symbolizes the risen Christ, and then our sort of first Mass of Easter. So what would be some of the things that maybe you think it would be helpful for people to know about the Triduum liturgy as we prepare to celebrate it?
Yeah, I think, Father John, as you mentioned in Mass, this is really one extended liturgical celebration, which is a beautiful thing that I didn't realize until I got to seminary, how it's considered just one long liturgy. And as John talks about in his gospel, the hour of Christ's glory is represented in this one long liturgical celebration. You start with Holy Thursday in the upper room, Jesus instituting the Eucharist, and then, as one thing that I never noticed until someone pointed out, Holy Thursday there's no closing prayer. Good Friday there's no opening prayer or closing prayer, and then Holy Saturday you finish with the big finish. And it's really cool to see how the church reflects that in the liturgy, how it's one extended celebration, because we're celebrating one mystery.
Joe, anything you'd want to add to that in terms of what? Coming out of your experience as a layperson of celebrating the Triduum, it's always beautiful, it's very, very profound. Some of the things that have meant the most to you in that liturgy, that you think might help our people to understand as we celebrate what's happening?
One of the things that stood out, that still sticks out to me when I first heard it, in the Eucharistic prayer, often we'll hear, on the night that he was betrayed, he took bread, broke it, gave it to the disciples. But, we kind of hear that institutionary. But on Holy Thursday, in a very particular way, you might hear, on the night before he was to suffer, that is this night. So that they add these words in the Eucharistic prayer to kind of tell us that's tonight. We hear it every year, every day, because at every Mass, it's the sacrifice of Calvary represented to us. But on Holy Thursday, we're able to say that's this night. We're really remembering it in a special way. And going back to that kind of idea of the one liturgical celebration, it's very beautiful to think that we're remembering it in a very particular way now, our Lord's suffering, his passion, his death, up to his resurrection. And I think especially in this time, it's a call to kind of remember it in that really particular way. It's this night. This night Jesus went into the garden. This night Jesus was betrayed by all of his disciples. This night he was arrested. Good Friday. It's today that he was tried. It was today that he walked away from the cross. It was at this hour that he died upon the cross. And in this time of so much kind of uncertainty and the kind of Lenten penances that have just been imposed on us that we haven't chosen for ourselves, I think it's a really blessed opportunity to enter into the Passion of our Lord personally, and to remember those kind of very particular instances throughout these days that the Church kind of recalls to our memory. And so we remember them all the time throughout the year because they're mysteries that can't be exhausted. But over the next kind of few days, it'll be at the exact moments basically that we remember them. And so all the more intense way we can be with our Lord in that. So that's really stuck out to me, that kind of.
It's something to think about in terms of these next few days, especially beginning tomorrow night through until Easter. How, where you're living close at home. I realize that that can make life a little difficult, right? You're there with your families, and therefore trying to find a kind of quiet space may not be as easy as it is when you're able to go out and what have you. Now, just to make you aware of the fact, especially during these days, that the church, both of our churches are open here at St. Thomas and at St. John's. Here at St. Thomas, the church will be open. St. John's, the chapel, construction is going on upstairs. But you might want to just think about making a visit during the day. I can remember as a kid growing up, Good Friday was always a day that we tried to be quiet. We couldn't play the radio or the TV or any music. So kind of look for some way to make these days a little different, to kind of help each other to enter into the prayer. We had some interesting ideas. We were talking about this on Saturday in our little conversation about what people could do at home. And I shared with our viewers, a friend of mine, Father George Moore, up in Newburyport, showed me a picture of a family, and they had set a big screen TV, and they were watching the Mass live streamed. So they set a table up in front of it to look like an altar. They put a couple of candles on it, and one of the kids in the family was an altar server, so he would dress up. So it was like they were going to Mass. So we were thinking of ways in which at home, when you're sort of watching us and when praying with us, so we talked about some of the ideas, kind of clever. One is, of course, I always remember the ringing of the bells at the Gloria tomorrow night. It's almost like there's this one glorious moment that enables us to kind of lift up our spirits before we enter into the Passion of the Lord. So if you have a bell at home, you can ring during the singing of the Gloria. We're looking forward to that. On Friday, I hope in your home somewhere, maybe in a few places, a crucifix. This might be a nice time to bring the crucifix out, put it in a place of prominence, and just kind of take a moment, to remember Jesus on the cross. That's a very, very distinctively Catholic thing, the crucifix. So that might be something you could do to enter into the mystery of the Lord's Passion on Friday. And then we said, the Easter Vigil normally begins in darkness and we light a candle. Maybe light a candle and put that in a place to remind you that Jesus is the light that has come into the world to scatter the darkness of sin and death. We mentioned a few weeks ago, and again, one of you folks out there, you know who you are, suggested putting a candle in our window. So I've seen a few candles as I'm coming and going. Over at the rectory, we have a candle in the window of our chapel, and that comes on at night so people know the Blessed Sacrament is there, and also candles in the window of our church here. So let's think about some way to make these days different. They're such important days in our life as a church, and we are in a very different situation than we've ever been, so it calls for a little bit of creativity and imagination. Now let me just see if any of you have any questions or suggestions.
One suggestion was that they're going to shut all the house lights off during the readings and have one candle going.
Okay,
And
right.
some are making a Paschal candle at home.
That's great.
So they're going to
So
do that.
just the way we start the Easter liturgy, the great vigil of Easter, in a darkened church, you might do that darken the house. It's really kind of a way that we kind of open ourselves up to what it means to light that candle. That's a great idea.
Father Gilson says hello, welcome back Dennis and Deacon. And someone wants to know if either of you speak Portuguese or Spanish.
We're working on it.
Okay.
But we do want people to know that we'll be celebrating tomorrow night's Mass will be bilingual for our Brazilian and American community, as will the Easter Vigil. So we'll be providing you with a way to be able to follow that in English and in Portuguese as well. So
We've had a number of comments that are welcoming Joe and Deacon Dennis and want to know how blessed we feel as a community to have them with us.
We feel the same.
A lot of them.
So again, think about some ways that we, might get to know them. We'll maybe have more of these conversations. As I say, where they're interested in their summer assignments. So right now, remember, they're in school, the virtual classroom, for a couple of months. But hopefully this summer there'll be opportunities for them to get out to know you. We're all, of course, I think, just like every day when I'm reading the news, and watching the curve, thinking about, when something will begin to happen. Just reading about China, where I guess there was the first day without a death, so that people are now kind of emerging, still keeping a certain distance, wearing masks, but trying to get back to something like normal, where people will have activities and be able to interact with each other. So hopefully that's on a bit of time to come. But what would be some of the things that you were looking forward to doing? Because you've had summer assignments before, and Dennis, you even know our parish community. Some of the things that the seminary wants you to do while you're in parish.
Yeah, especially with this being my final year of seminary formation, some of the things that we were looking forward to doing in formation that hopefully I'll still get a chance to do with the rectory or with people, please God, when that opportunity comes in the future, we hope, that they want us to practice doing the sacraments, because that's going to be a reality for us, for myself and Deacon Dan very soon. For those who haven't heard, our ordination was scheduled for May 16th originally, but because of all the guidelines, because of the whole situation right now, it's been postponed until August 1st. So while there is a sadness there is also the blessing in that we have another 2 months to prepare. And so we hope to do all these practices. We're learning how to say Mass. We're learning how to do anointing, which is especially important during this time. Learning how to do funerals. Learning how to do all these sacraments. How to do these liturgical rites. That's something I hope to be able to do, is become far more intimately familiar with the sacraments, so that, please God, I'm able to perform them in the near future. So it's going to be funny in the rectory. At some point, I might randomly go up to someone and just practice doing an anointing, or practicing the words of absolution for the sacrament of confession. So those are the things I'm looking forward to, especially during the summer, and also being able to, once we can get back to a sort of normalcy, be able to do baptisms, being able to preside at funerals and graveside services.
Joe, what are some of the things you've done in your summer assignments? Where have you been, and what kind of things?
Yeah, so someone brought up Spanish. I'm glad. My first summer after my philosophy studies at St. John's. I actually did an immersion program down in Mexico City, where I was working on my Spanish, which I've been kind of doing in school for a while. Unfortunately, that's mostly been replaced by Italian at this point. And so really one of the goals this summer is to really work on that Spanish, get that back. But I also had a summer assignment where I was at St. Paul and Resurrection Parishes in Hingham. And so, I think generally, obviously the sacramental stuff will come with time, but there's just a sense of kind of the administrative, kind of logistical behind-the-scenes things of the parish that I think they want the seminarians to experience. So, how do you run the meetings? How do you kind of handle the things that pastors have to do? But at the end of the day, none of that really matters if there aren't people in the parish to serve. And so, I think it's a mix of that, but then really just getting to know the people, getting to know all of you, and kind of hearing about your own lives, your families, your stories, and kind of, just being with you in that, praying with you in that. And so that's what I'm kind of really most looking forward to, is just finally getting to meet you face to face in person. But then also learning a lot, obviously, from Father John, Father Kevin, and the rest of the men in the house, just kind of, learning what the day-to-day life is of a parish priest, in a parish. We can kind of forget that sometimes in the seminary, so it's good to kind of be on the ground, if you will.
Just
Any questions?
a couple things. Joe had said earlier that during the Triduum Mass at this time, this happened. So then should we be watching the live stream at that time and not view it later as a recorded? And the other thing is, will St. Thomas or St. John's have adoration in the evening at all?
Okay, we'd encourage you to be watching it live. In fact, that was an interesting thing. We got a directive, really, from the Congregation for Divine Worship in Rome, that the masses or the service, that is the extended Triduum, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and Easter Vigil, are to be celebrated live. And we were talking about that last night too. The importance of that is that the Eucharist, particularly when it's celebrated in these very holy days, is entering into a moment in time when we celebrate what happened in time. And therefore the Church's calendar, and the fact that we celebrate the Holy Thursday, the Lord's Supper, in Thursday evening, the Passion Service Friday afternoon, the Easter Vigil Saturday night, the idea of pre-recording it, we were hearing about some parishes that were going to do that. It would be weird for me, like today, on Wednesday, to do it. So it kind of reminds us of how, the Church enters into the celebration of a mystery that occurs in time and space by remembering the sacredness of a very particular time and place. So if at all possible, we'd really, invite you to take the time tomorrow night, Friday afternoon, and Saturday evening to be with us. These are posted, so there will be a recording of it for those who can only see it afterwards. And I think we'll be looking into, the possibility maybe of adoration. As I said, we want to keep the churches open, so hopefully tomorrow night maybe we'll make an announcement about hours of adoration. But keep in mind that the churches are open, and so we invite people to take the time to come. Also, we are asked about reconciliation. So tonight, Wednesday night, throughout the Archdiocese, we're asked to be available for confessions. However, we're doing that with great sensitivity to the situation we're in. So tonight, over at St. John's, I will be in the confessional room, which is upstairs. The room is big enough that there's a distance. When you come in, you simply sit down. I'm going to be on the other side of the room behind the screen. So, that's an opportunity to receive the sacrament of reconciliation. We've mentioned before, for some people who are confined or who really don't feel comfortable coming out, it's important to, first of all, be practicing spiritual communion, but also, if you're aware of sin, I was taught when I was following the Baltimore Catechism growing up, the first thing you want to do is make a sincere act of contrition. So, let God know that aware of our sin, we ask His mercy and forgiveness, and then we take the opportunity when it presents itself to go to the sacrament of reconciliation. Any other questions about what's going to be happening?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So we hope you'll be joining us tomorrow night at 7:30, Good Friday at 3 o'clock, the Easter Vigil at 8 o'clock, and on Easter Sunday morning. We're also looking into Easter Sunday morning, an opportunity for you all to share with us maybe some words, maybe a picture, photograph, something like that. So I'm really pretty new to this social media thing. I actually took out an account on Facebook just so we could start a Facebook account for the parish. But I'm always amazed at seeing pictures of people that I know. So we're going to see if we can find some way for you all to see each other, for us to see you, maybe with a little Easter message. So it's great being with you. Again, tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday, we won't be here at 9:30, so don't tune in because we won't be here. But please join us for the Triduum. And we ask God to bless you and your family and your loved ones, especially any of you who are affected at all. Maybe you or someone you know has been tested positive. This is a very, very difficult time for so many people. And we continue to pray really in a very special way for doctors and nurses and people who are there on the front lines. They are doing just an amazing job. And that is really the kind of love we talk about, the love of Christ, who was willing to offer his life for others. So these men and women are doing that, and we pray for them every day. So take care, keep in touch, and God bless.